Let's talk about effectiveness. Was it effective yesterday by Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni in their public presentation of here's who we are, here's what we believe in, here's what we do, here's what we're going to do? Look, I want to hear from everyone at 215-592-9494. We're going to play tons of audio from the press conference through the show. Obviously, you can react to last night's Sixers and Flyers games. Divergent results, to say the least, in those two games. But, we'll start with the press conference from yesterday, which was highly anticipated from our end. I'd say in some ways it fell flat because we didn't get a ton of answers. But I have a specific thought of my main reaction. But, John, I want to hear from you first, and I want to hear from everyone at 215-592-9494. John, what hit you the most from that press conference yesterday as it relates? I mean, look, obviously it's in part to the past of the Eagles, but what really matters now is the future of the Eagles. You can't change the past. You can only learn from it. The future of the Eagles, what shaped in your mind based on what you heard?
What hit me the most, and it was a question that wasn't asked, and I get it. I guess it's why Nick Sirianni? That coming away from the very first press conference of the season. I know that sounds negative, but I did want to have a better idea in my mind after this interview, exactly why he's still around.
Mm-hmm.
We knew it might not be awe-inspiring. This is not Nick's area of greatest expertise, public speaking. We figured Howie would be well-spoken, and he would sound like he had a plan, and that's exactly what it sounded like. Nick was problematic, and you couldn't help asking yourself, why is this guy the coach? My worst fears still remain. After yesterday, I wish I had more answers. I wonder, coming away from that press conference, do players like Nick because he's a good coach? Do players like Nick because they respect him? Do players defend Nick to no end because he's easy? He's a pushover? Or because he's a good coach and they admire the X's and O's that he puts out there and gives them the ability to excel. Do they respect Nick? I can't say it filled me with confidence yesterday that right out of the gates, Nick tells us they're still trying to put their finger on exactly what went wrong.
Yeah, that was a little surprising that he indicated they're still doing the review.
They're still in the process of analyzing the drop-off.
I was frustrated by that too. I mean, theoretically, John, there could be a study that takes 2 months to do, but come on, guys. I mean, it's March 1st in 2 days. Free agency's in 2 weeks.
He said he doesn't want to give us a premature answer on that. I'm not worried about that part.
I thought the same thing.
He said they're committed to getting it better. I hate how everything is so vague with Nick, and this has been my problem all along. I know I have not been a player. I have not been coached by Nick. I don't know what it feels like if these concepts are being communicated to me properly or not. But that's my biggest issue. If I were one of his players, if things were put to me the way he's putting them, what would I do with it? In regard to leadership, we're told they've talked to Jalen about his leadership style. Is this coach, Nick Sirianni, the right coach to explain the nuances of leadership to our young quarterback who is moldable and impressionable? Is Nick Sirianni doing a great job of guiding Jalen into becoming a great leader? That's a major part of Nick's job. So when you listen to Nick talk about leadership yesterday, it doesn't sound like he nails it in a way that if I'm Jalen, I better understand what's expected of me as a leader. Just reading from what he said yesterday. So Jalen needs to lead how he needs to lead, right? And A.J. Brown needs to lead how he needs to lead, whoever it is. Slay's got to lead how he needs to lead, because that's leadership, right? Is being who you are and leading by example. At the end of the day, if you're leading by example, that's a great style of leadership. So Jalen needs to lead how he needs to lead, and I think he's done a great job of doing so. And he'll just get, like he has done in other things, he'll get better at that part of his game, and he'll get better. Just because I know he'll continue to work on getting better, no matter what part of the game he needs to work at. Seriously? I don't think that's clear. I really don't think that's clear. I understand the work part. I appreciate the work part. Do you think that Jalen is getting a clear and concise idea of exactly what's expected of him as a leadership as put by Nick Sirianni?
Well, to be fair,
I don't know the answer.
So to be
I don't feel confident in the answer.
Fair enough. I'll say this, though. To be fair, I didn't expect Howie or Sirianni to give you chapter and verse on exactly how they feel Hurts can be a better leader.
I understand.
Or a better player.
I agree.
I went in with that expectation.
And I didn't expect a deep dive.
Are you saying that
this comes back to my
whether
problem? This circles back to my problem, the biggest problem. How do the players feel about Nick Sirianni? Do the players respect Nick Sirianni as a coach?
No, I know. Here's what I think you're saying. I think what you're saying is in the private room when cameras aren't rolling, does Sirianni have it in him to properly lead Jalen Hurts on how to lead?
I think he's also saying, will Jalen Hurts even look to Nick Sirianni for leadership? Like, can this guy do that?
Well, that's the point. You look to the guy if you believe in the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're saying is a lack of belief in Sirianni or
lack of belief in Sirianni. And
yeah.
every player on this roster and every player who's going to arrive into town, they have to understand the dynamic too. Who do they go to with their football questions? I'm sure not all the football questions are exclusively directed to Nick Sirianni any longer. Now you got both coordinators. Now you got Howie Roseman. Now you got Jeffrey Lurie. We don't know how they fit in. This is such a complicated puzzle.
All right, so look, we want to hear from you at 215-592-9494 on your biggest takeaway or takeaways from yesterday's press conference. And again, we're going to play a lot of the audio throughout the show. I will tell you my biggest takeaway was, and I'll give it to you in 3 words, I'm so conflicted. I listen to these guys talk, and obviously we've been hearing them for years. I mean, Howie we've been hearing for over a decade. Sirianni we've been hearing now for 3 years. And I listened yesterday, and I'm just so conflicted. And here's the conflict within me. So the negative is I'm well aware, as we all are, of the crash and burn, which was epic to end the season. I did not think, and I was very clear about it publicly, I did not think Sirianni should be back as the head coach. I found aspects of yesterday's press conference frustrating. I thought there were some answers from Sirianni that got meandering, that make me question when he is privately with the guys, is he meandering with them also?
Hold on. Meandering is exactly what he is.
Yeah.
There is no substance whatsoever. There are questions.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, there's questions that need answered. I need to know a lot more. Yesterday, hey, tell us exactly what went wrong. They still don't know. They're examining it. Hold on. The issues that must be avoided in the future. Just give us an idea. You failed massively down the final stretch. Give us an idea that you know what you need to do to right the ship.
Well,
hold on.
Okay, but
hold on.
Okay.
He said maybe we leaned a little bit more into one category of our core values: connect, compete, accountability, football IQ, and fundamentals. Maybe at times I felt like I leaned maybe a little more into one and not enough into the other. If I'm a player and I'm searching for answers from last year, and that's what my coach is providing for the answer for what went wrong last year, I don't know. I don't know any better. I don't understand any better what went wrong last year. Nick Sirianni, I know he appreciates teachers. He loves the fact that, he comes from a long line of teachers. This is what he does. Is he teaching these guys well enough? Is he getting his message across well enough?
Here's where I think you're being unfair. And again, everyone can weigh in on all this at 215-592-9494. Here's where I think you're being unfair to Sirianni on this one, John. He never yesterday said, we fired Sean Desai, we fired Brian Johnson, we fired Matt Patricia. But you know what they did? They fired all 3 guys. Now, technically, Patricia's contract.
Well, he would say, "I fired."
But here's the point. For what went wrong, they gave us an answer with what went wrong, with who they did not retain, and there was a 0% chance that in addressing yesterday what went wrong, he was going to say, you know what? The coordinators did a bad job, and so we canned all their asses.
Their actions told us what went wrong.
Correct. Look, was it more than just that? Yes. Sirianni's role within the offense was a problem. He's still here.
The problem is when you do this, when you say, hey, your actions are what was wrong, and the players know what happened behind closed doors, the players know who's culpable and who's not, who's more culpable, who's less culpable, when the rumors are like, hey, Desai didn't deserve what he got? Like, that's a real problem.
Well, so, look, the players were in a tough spot and perhaps still are as it relates to last year, as it relates to Desai and all that. I'll say this. The biggest thing for me was conflict because, and I'm talking about my reaction yesterday, the negative is I know last year was a crash and burn. I didn't think Sirianni should be back. I was frustrated at times yesterday listening. I agree with John. It wasn't like we exactly got, all the answers or anywhere near all the answers we wanted. In many ways, we got sort of no real answers, and that's annoying. The positive side, though, within the conflict for me is this. I listen to Howie Roseman, and I remind myself to remember that this guy's an exceptional general manager. Like, he is. Not he was. He is. I believe that. I believe in Howie. So when I hear him talk, even though he wasn't going to spill the beans, I say to myself, this is a GM I believe can get the Eagles back on track. When I hear Sirianni talk, conflict really reigns on me on Sirianni because on one hand, the answers are meandering. I, like John, do wonder whether he has it in his bag to be able to turn this thing around. But I also know as a head coach in pro football, he has made the playoffs 3 years in a row. All 3 years he's been a coach. When I hear him talk, I'll give you here's the ultimate conflict for me yesterday.
And he'll tell you, hey, look, we were coming out of the greatest culture any of us have ever seen.
Right.
But can you get back to that culture?
Well,
do you know how to get back to that culture? I don't think I've been provided answers. I don't think I've been provided like an inkling that you know how to identify what went wrong or how to get back to that beautiful place that we felt this team was automatically going to stay in.
Here's the ultimate bullseye conflict for me yesterday, and we'll play this audio as we move through it, but he referenced many times his 5 core values, many times. And on one hand, I say to myself, man, this might be getting real stale for the players. Like maybe they connect, accountability. Like maybe the players after 3 years in the locker room are like, you know what, coach, enough. All right. Because look, if he said it that many times in a 15-minute press conference yesterday, you can only imagine how many times he says it in a season, let alone 3.
Totally. And it's also something that can get stale quickly because it's like compete. Yeah, compete.
Right,
I get it.
Right,
yeah, we're supposed to compete.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like groundbreaking, profound stuff.
Correct.
Here.
So on one hand, I wonder if the message got stale,
like
and if that's part of the reason.
The guys resent
and if that's part of the reason down the stretch they struggled, they didn't respond to his thing. But I do say to myself, James, I hear you on compete. Okay, but you know what? Accountability does matter a frickin' ton. It's not a bad core value to have. It's not a bad trait to want to lean into as an entire organization. So to me, I have conflict on that one. Then I'll address Hurts.
Hold on. Yeah. The accountability thing. The word was the accountability fell by the wayside, and that's part of the problem. That's part of the dissolution.
Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. I mean, Marcus Hayes' report yesterday, I never expected.
It was reported that many players felt.
It was reported that 2 players spoke to Marcus Hayes. And I'll say this, if any player on that roster did not think that player 1 and player 53 were going to be treated different, then they had their head up their ass. Because they are treated different.
On every team in the NFL.
On every team. So, I don't put a ton into that. And listen, I'll say this regarding Hurts. Yesterday for me was a reminder hearing, look, you guys know I've been very down on Hurts. I've been very down. I've been very clear about that. But listening to Sirianni speak yesterday, it was a great reminder for me that I do believe Hurts will dig in to try to get a hell of a lot better. Like, we shouldn't lose sight of that, even if he lost his way for 12 months or 3 months or whatever the heck.
I didn't lose sight of that. Jalen Hurts is a
hard-working, but a lot of people did.
A lot of people did.
A lot of people did.
A coach type guy.
I don't give a damn about son of a coach. What I care about is a guy.
All we talked about was Captain Intangible for the first 2 years of this guy's career.
That's right.
That's what he's best at. Like the intangible stuff.
Well,
like the whole leadership. That's why this whole leadership thing, it's crazy. I can't believe it's gotten
Well, I don't think it's crazy because there's a difference between him improving his game and him improving his relationship with teammates.
He can improve his leadership just like
he
can improve his game. It's just that it doesn't seem like it's possible that he could have gotten so far from the mark. So far from the mark.
Well,
so
Carson
quickly.
did.
Okay. Carson's a completely different person.
Right, but
and Carson fell apart in so many ways
did.
that we weren't aware.
All right, look, we'll take your reaction to all of this. Howie and Sirianni yesterday. Again, we'll play audio coming up next throughout the hour, throughout the show. But what do you make of what they said, what they didn't say, how they presented themselves, and ultimately, what do you make of the future of the Eagles based on what you heard and based on what you perceive the Eagles to be as an organization? 215-592-9494. Your phone calls on all this stuff, plus the Sixers and Flyers and more. Ruben at 7, Joe DeCamera, John Ritchie. It's 94 WIP.